You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Welcome to Alabama syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. I'm not Phil Williams. I'm Scott Buttram from the Trussville Tribune, sitting in today for Phil. Here in the Rightside studio, we'll bring you all the news, local, state, and national. Don't know how much local we'll do, but we've got plenty of state and national to talk about. We'll try to hit all the issues. We will try to be solid, conservative, and just plain right. Let's start with a story that broke this morning, a national story. A little shocking on one hand. On the other hand, the insanity we have seen from the current Biden administration, maybe not so shocking. The Biden administration has admitted, this was through a FOIA, a Freedom of Information request, the Biden administration has admitted to transporting 320,000 illegal immigrants by air from foreign airports to United States cities. Let that sink in a minute, folks. These folks that we're talking about, these 320,000 illegal immigrants, did not come through our borders. They didn't come through the southern border. They didn't come through the northern border with Canada. No, the Biden administration, the United States government under the Biden administration, flew 320,000 illegal immigrants into our country from foreign airports. They bypassed the border. That, again, was discovered and admitted by the Biden administration after a FOIA lawsuit was reported by Todd Benson. The Center for Immigration Studies found that Biden's United States Customs and Border Protection, CBP, approved secret flights full of illegal immigrants to at least 43 different airports in the United States from January through December. That's in a one-month period. 320,000 illegal immigrants flown into the country by the Biden administration from foreign airports. The illegal immigrants were able to use the Biden administration's CBP One app to apply for asylum from their home countries. Illegal immigrants who can't enter the United States legally use CBP One app to apply for taxpayer-funded travel to a United States airport. They are then allowed to remain in the United States for 2 years without obtaining legal status and are eligible for work authorization in the U.S. The Biden administration is refusing to disclose which airports the immigrants were flown to. We know it was 43 of them. And the administration is citing concerns that if they reveal the information about the relative number of individuals arriving and the resources expended at particular airports, it could harm national security. I guess that's what they're citing. But our president, who has seen a surge during the just over 3 years that he's been in office, we've seen a surge in illegal immigration at the southern border. And now we find out that 1,300,000 illegal immigrants were flown in directly to our country into 43 different American citizens by this president. Does it surprise you? I doubt it. I doubt if it surprises anyone at this point. The question is, what's the ulterior motive here? What is the ulterior motive? We've heard a lot of speculation. The Democrats would like to see these illegal immigrants eventually become voters, believing that they'll all vote Democrat, or the majority of them will. I don't actually think history agrees with that. I don't know that that's a guaranteed Democrat vote. My suspicion is a little more straightforward. The United States Supreme Court is allowing immigrants to be counted in the census. The census is what decides congressional districts. When lines move, when it could lead to a shift between Republican-controlled district or a Democrat-controlled district, Stacking those districts, you may not have 100,000 voters in a congressional district, but you could have 100,000 people, and some of them may not be citizens of the United States. I think that is the goal, is to pack congressional districts to give Democrats an advantage. I'm like you. I don't really know definitively why we're allowing this to happen in our country. We're seeing things that are just beyond bizarre. For example, in 2023, in all of 2023, there were 450 Chinese nationalists that immigrated to the United States through our borders. In 1 month, there were 20,000 Chinese nationals, all males, admitted into the United States. 20,000 in 1 month after only 450 the previous year. There's no place to send them back to because we don't have an agreement with China that allows us to send their citizens who are here illegally back to China. I want to remind you, we've got the text line going. I have not seen a text yet from John from Huntsville. I know that will happen any minute now. Our text line here is 833-687-4448. Again, 833-687-4448. If you've got a text, want to send us a message, please do so. I'll try to keep up with that and respond to as many as we can. In Montgomery, interesting, the Travel and Tourism Committee just went into session, for those of you who might be following the gambling legislation, which has already passed the House, by the way. That passed pretty quickly. It is in the Senate now, and that is being handled by the Tourism Committee. They went into session. The committee went into session, said that there would be a substitute bill coming. We've been hearing that, but evidently adjourned without getting their hands on the substitute. So we don't know exactly where it stands. We're watching that. However, we will be joined by Jeff Poore of the Jeff Poore Radio Show, also editor of 1819 News. Jeff will be joining us at 2:30. He has been keeping his finger on the pulse of what's going on in Montgomery during this legislative session. Really look forward to speaking to him. We'll have Paul DeMarco with us for the 3 o'clock hour. Very excited about that. Paul is the former chairman of the Jefferson County GOP. He is also a former state senator, and he is also the political columnist, award-winning political columnist for the Trussville Tribune. We're proud to have Paul associated with us. He does a great job keeping our readers in the Birmingham or Jefferson St. Clair area informed about what's happening in Montgomery, bills that are going along, and all the things happening behind the scenes. So we'll be looking forward to both of those guys. Also trying to reach out to Danny Garrett. Want to see if we can get Representative Danny Garrett in for the 4 o'clock hour. Have not heard back yet, but hopefully we will be able to get him in. Representative Garrett chairs the Education Ways and Means Committee in the House. He is the money guy for education. He is also a strong proponent for school choice. He carried the Choose Act in the House, which is got a little work in front of them, but they're doing a good job. That's a very strong bill, and we'll get the latest on everything going on in the House from Representative Garrett. Should we be able to get him on? A reminder one more time. Let me see. Make sure that I need to refresh this. I'm trying to refresh our text line, folks. So if y'all are trying to text me, I can see what's going on. But I don't see any new text yet. But we'll keep an eye on that. So if you've got any questions that you want to touch base with, let us know. And big event in the country today. Everybody should have an opinion on this. We had a cyber attack, or we're assuming it's a cyber attack. Facebook, Instagram, multiple social media applications owned by Meta and some other companies were shut down today, at least for a period of time. I couldn't get on my Facebook page. I can get on through my app on my phone now, but I still can't get on the desktop. What was behind this? Is it the fact that today is Super Tuesday, 16 states are conducting presidential primaries? Do you think that's behind the cyber attack? Is this China flexing its muscles, saying, "Hey, look what we can do," and just wait till November? I don't know. Is it just poorly run companies, tech companies? I don't know. I don't know what's behind it. Anything I suggested would be speculation or guess. But I'm interested in your speculation and your guesses. Maybe you've got some ideas that I haven't thought of. Maybe you're tuned in on this. Maybe you are from the tech world and you have some insight that us commoners don't understand. We'd love to hear from you and share that information with us. Again, back to Super Tuesday. Did it feel a little anticlimactic for you? It did for me. There wasn't a real build-up to today's Super Tuesday elections. I love elections. I treat them like a ball game, man. I cook tailgate food, throw a party, the whole 9 yards. But today it's just been kind of quiet, kind of anticlimactic. I guess the big race in Alabama will be between Jerry Carl and Barry Moore. We'll know by the end of the day which one of those guys will end up being our Republican nominee for that congressional district. We'll keep an eye on it. We're going to take a break here soon. When we get back, we'll touch on some other headlines and be looking for Jeff Poore from the Jeff Poore Radio Show to join us at about 2:30, and we'll keep Jeff around till the top of the hour. We hope that you'll stay with us. We've got a lot to talk about today, and we want your ideas, your thoughts. Send us a text, 833-687-4448. We'll be right back after this message. We're back. This is Scott Buttram sitting in for Phil Williams here at Rightside Radio. I'm the publisher of the Trustful Tribune. Phil's out of the office, out of the studio a little bit this week. We think we'll have him returning tomorrow, but then he's going to take another quick break. I think court duty calls, and we will try in his absence to be solid, conservative, and just plain right. My wife tells me that I'm rarely right, but never in doubt. So I don't know. Maybe you get a little of both of that. We finally heard from our long-lost friend, John of Huntsville. John has tweeted in and said, or texted in on our text line, that's 833-687-4448. John cast his vote this morning for Donald J. Trump for the Republican nomination for president. Said he had no problems other than the fact that his polling place was closed when he arrived, with instructions to go to a new polling place. So, John, that's a little bit of a curveball, buddy, and you handled it well. Still got his vote in. So things have popped up, but that doesn't sound terribly detrimental to the day. I do believe that I read a report earlier that maybe a precinct in Fairfield, Alabama, that's going to be in Jefferson County, I believe that precinct was delivered the wrong ballots this morning. That would probably be the Jefferson County Probate Office that would handle that, and I do think that was corrected pretty soon. But that's actually the only other election faux pas that I've heard about this morning. Let's see. We've got also a text from JT at Lacey Springs. Just take a minute for JT's to pop up. But I think I'd read JT's text earlier, and I think what he's questioning is if the Biden administration will fly 320,000 immigrants from foreign airports into the United States, what would keep them from handing them documentation papers? That's a good question. Would we put anything past this administration? I don't think there's anything that is off the table for them. I mean, let's think about this. The Supreme Court has said to the Biden administration, you cannot forgive student loans. You don't have that authority to do that. And this administration has publicly said we're now looking for a way around the Supreme Court's ruling. I think there are people in this administration that are simply oblivious to the three branches of government, the checks and balances that the Constitution puts in place for those three branches of government, and have decided to just flip their finger at the Constitution and do whatever they want to do. We got a taste of this under Barack Obama. Remember, it kind of got fuzzy when Trump went into office, and the Barack Obama apologist started saying, well, Trump is doing more executive orders than Barack Obama did. Yet they complained about Barack Obama's executive orders. Barack Obama was the first president in memory for me, and some of you scholars out there may remember a few others, who used executive orders after Congress told him no. After Congress voted on an issue that he supported and he wanted, and Congress said no, he then used an executive order to go around Congress and to ignore a third branch of the government. That's the difference in the executive orders, not all of them, but some signed by Barack Obama. And that's where this shift started among Democrat presidents, because Joe Biden has done it numerous times, where, using an executive order is fine. It's there for a reason. The framers put it there for a reason. But it's not to be used to go around other branches of government that have equal authority. Yet Barack Obama started that. Joe Biden has continued it. So, could they have handed out papers? Unfortunately, nothing would surprise me. Let's see. We've got some more text, but not a lot of questions here. What do we got? Number two. Number two from John. Is that what? 2 minutes. Okay. I've got a new producer in here, and he's having a little trouble educating me. He's figured out this old dog doesn't know very many new tricks. We've got a break coming up. Jeff Poor will join us after that. Let's see, another from John from Huntsville. What percentage of votes in Alabama do you think Donald Trump will receive? Also, do you think Nikki Haley will drop out of the race after today? I do think Haley will probably drop out after today. This is going to be convincing for her. I expect Donald Trump to have 80 to 85% of the votes in the state of Alabama on the Republican side. I don't think it'll be that close. And I think there are a lot of people who would like anybody other than Trump. I understand that. I also understand that there are a lot of people that it's Trump or die for them. And I understand and respect that as well. But we're going to have a lot clearer view of everything in terms of the Republican nomination for president at the end of Super Tuesday, with 16 states weigh in. And a lot of these are very strong conservative states, by the way. I think at that point, Nikki Haley will get the message. And it probably is. Listen, I was one of these that wanted to see what alternatives we had. But now we're down to two people. My fellow conservative voters have expressed overwhelming support for Donald Trump. It's probably time that the Republican Party unify behind Donald Trump and see if they can push him into the White House, because that's what really matters at this point. We'll be back shortly. Jeff Poore will join us just after the bottom of the hour. I'm Scott Buttram, sitting in for Phil Williams here at Rightside Radio. You stay with us. Welcome back to Rightside Radio. I'm Scott Buttram, sitting in today for Phil Williams here at Rightside Radio in the Rightside Radio studios. You may be listening to us in Huntsville at 92.5 FM or 770 AM. In Birmingham, maybe you're listening in on 101.1 FM or 850 AM. That's the station I listen to, is the 850 AM in Birmingham. That's the closest one to me. Joining us now is going to be the editor of 1819 News and the host of the Jeff Poor radio show. In fact, I think he is one of the most connected people politically in the state of Alabama. Jeff, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, thanks for coming on. You're a good friend. You always step in and rescue me when I find myself in these situations, and I appreciate you, bud. Jeff, let's start with Montgomery. I know you're watching everything going on there. I see that the Tourism Committee went into session and immediately adjourned. 20 seconds later? Have we got a substitute gambling bill? What's the latest?
No, I mean, I'm hearing the same things you're hearing. I'm not there. I'll be there tomorrow. But, I mean, like, all of this, like, cloak and dagger is not doing much to to calm the waters of suspicion now, is it? But
no,
that
not.
seems to be. I mean, they've never done anything sneaky before, have they?
No, not our legislature.
No, it's all transparent and open, and we're doing this for the right reasons. We're doing this because we really care about the children and our future. So let's put a casino on every street corner in Alabama.
Well, Jeff, if you're going to open that door, you've got to recap for our audience. Let's just walk us through the saga of the Tourism Committee. I mean, this has been going on for days. They're in, they're out. There's a bill, there's not a bill. One's coming, one's not. They're adjourning. Kind of walk our listeners through what has transpired there.
Well, I mean, it all kind of started last week. So this is Randy Price's committee. He's Opelika state senator.
Right.
He wants. I think he wants the House bill. When I was when the House passed their bill a few weeks ago, I was standing outside the chamber, just kind of watching things go. And Chris Blackshear, he's the sponsor of the House bill. I mean, Randy Price was waiting for him like a proud papa outside of the House chamber, gave him a big old hug, and it was really remarkable to watch that. So, yeah, and I'm just like, okay, well, clearly they're excited about this bill.
Well, I want to pause you 1 second, Jeff. That at this time, at the point that you're describing here, you are hearing from senators, and I am hearing from senators, probably not even the same senators, that are saying, nah, we're killing it or we're gutting the House gambling bill.
Right. Well, I mean, the Senate and the Senate Tourism Committee, kind of two separate things. So, no, you're right. You did hear that. And I think there's a little bit of this going on, Scott. Maybe they would go along with the House bill, maybe not. I think there's a lot of good reasons to go with it, but probably a lot more bad reasons not to.
Right.
And you look at it, the Senate wants to do its own thing. The Senate is treating this like, hey, we're not going to be pushed around by the Speaker of the House. We're the Alabama Senate. Who do they think they are downstairs trying to send us a bill upstairs and telling us this is how it's going to be, even though it's not quite the same. But it was, granted, it was a very different Senate 2-3 years ago that passed something similar to what the House had done. But anyway, like, kind of fast forward, all of this, I think, is being generated like, well, this is what you need to know. This is the bottom line. The Senate does not want this session to end, and they are the ones who are getting the finger pointed at them, saying, hey, the House did their job. How come you guys aren't doing your job?
Right.
I mean, that's what you need to know. I think that is the motivation here. I don't think it has. I mean, there's probably, are there people in the Senate or people on the Senate Tourism Committee who would like to see gambling finally done? Yes, but I think the ultimate thing you need to know is we're not going to get the blame. We're going to say, hey, we did the simple lottery or clean lottery. We're not the one that took the whole. I mean, we just took a bite of the apple. We would take the whole apple and shove it down our throat.
So is in all this talk about a substitute bill, is that your best guess at what a substitute bill would say, that it would just be a clean lottery bill?
I don't think so. I think there'll probably be something else to it, probably something dealing with Porch Creek.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how far that would go because is it just a compact, or could there be more? Would they be open to authorizing what tribal land and allowing for a different definition? Or I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But there's several sticking points here. I think this big one, Scott, is creating this whole new law enforcement agency,
right?
Kind of just out of nothing, right? Who's it answerable to? And then that's the question, like, would the lieutenant governor get an appointment, or the governor, and they have a board that they answer to, and it's kind of answers to these elected, but the appointment goes to these commissioners, goes to this elected officials, this board, or whatever that may be. But anytime we create a commission in this state, tell me what happens. And I'll just say medical marijuana commission, ethics commission. These kind of pseudo-governmental entities. Government
grows.
They're not constitutional, and they're like what they're supposed to cover. It kind of lands on other agencies' turfs, and you have these turf wars like we're seeing with the ethics commission right now. That seems like always happens. And that would be my fear with this gambling. We're going to have to wait 5 years for the Alabama Supreme Court to rule who really has jurisdiction over X, Y, and Z dealing with gambling.
Right. We almost create problems through this process, and we do it on a pretty regular basis. It's interesting to me that one of the tenets of conservatism is smaller government. Do you feel like that message never quite made it to Alabama?
I think when all the Democrats became Republicans, that you had a dilution of that. That these guys were not. These were like the Carter Democrats, right? And now they would never vote for a Ronald Reagan, the dumb actor or whatever, and then they just sort of kind of eached it to the Republican Party. They're not woke liberals. They're not confused about gender pronouns or none of that nonsense. But they have this ideological belief that the government's government is the force for good. That people can't take care of themselves, and you need government to kind of step in and show the poor, blighted masses the way. And I think that's a mentality, unfortunately, of a lot of Republican lawmakers. They would never say it publicly. That's pretty clear by what legislation they put out there. And, what government agencies that they keep sustaining and funding, and ABC board and things like that. Speaking of, quasi-governmental entities that overstep their boundaries sometimes. What was it in 2020, Scott? The ABC board is going into bars and policing mask mandates. What's going on here?
Well, Jeff, I'm not worried about the ABC board, because as soon as Republicans take over the state, they're going to disband the ABC board, and the state's going to get out of the liquor business.
They're gonna reduce government. We're not gonna create these. We're not gonna create these new agencies, are we? None of that.
Well, I think the problem, and you've already touched on it, the problem was we were assuming when Republicans took over Montgomery, it would actually be Republicans that took over Montgomery, but it was just warmed over Democrats that took over Montgomery as the Republicans, and they just continued to operate like they did as Democrats.
And they're allowed to Alabama is allowed to be thought of as a right-wing, conservative, reactionary, populist state because of some of the social issue stuff, like the Supreme Court decision, and it creates a sort of faux perception. But deep down, you look at who's elected, who's in an elective office.
Right.
I think the people of Alabama are way more conservative than some of these elected people, but I just don't think that, look at what do you think turnout's going to be today for this primary? 25%, maybe?
Oh, I think 25% would be really high.
Okay, well, I think
it's going to look more like a municipal election, about 20%.
Okay, fair enough. And maybe in different places in the state, but I think there's an enthusiasm gap.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, sure, Donald Trump's on the ballot today, but look at consider I always think about my parents and kind of very conservative, but kind of quasi aware of local politics, but not really motivated
Right.
to really engage in it.
They're watching
And
Fox News at night.
Yeah, they tell you all about Rush Limbaugh during the day. Dad, who's our congressman? I don't know. Who cares? Bill Clinton's terrible, right? So
it's always somebody else's congressman, though. You know that, right? No matter what's going wrong, it's not my guy. He goes to church with me on Sunday.
Dad's like, what the hell's a Spencer Bacchus? I don't know what that is. But that being said, it's the people who do care tend to be more of it's the business community. It's
right.
Your realtors, bankers, and this is applicable not to Birmingham. I mean, that is where the business community really the headquarters. But in every little small town in Alabama, this is why a Katie Britt or a Kay Ivey do well. It's because you have the more engaged in local politics tends to be the professional class, and those are the
right.
people that really push those kinds of candidates, and they do well. So, and that's what I think is going on here. I think that's the same. It's applicable to the Alabama legislature that you don't put in. That's why you only have 2 or 3 guys who are the real right wingers in a state like Alabama. You have Ben Harrison, Ernie Yarborough, Arnold Mooney, maybe a few others. Throw in Mike Butler. From time to time, but the real 3 that are going to be reliable right wing vote are those 3 out of 105
right.
in Alabama.
Right.
How does that happen? It's just because I think a lot of people just aren't engaged at this level.
Well, they're depending on us not to pay attention. Hey, Jeff, we're coming up on a quick break. Can you hang with us for the next segment?
Sure.
Good deal. Thank you. This is Scott Buttram sitting in for Phil Williams at Rightside Radio. We'll be back right after this break. Welcome back. I'm Scott Buttram, sitting in for Phil Williams here at Rightside Radio in the Rightside Radio studios. Got a couple of texts we wanted to touch on. One from Clint and Tony. This is the conversation we had earlier about the 320,000 illegal immigrants that Joe Biden's administration has admitted flying into the country. Clint says that the Biden administration is a major crime syndicate, and he is not surprised by that. And we've also Steve from Huntsville has weighed in and said he expects Biden to give blanket pardons to all the illegal immigrants on his way out of office. Neither of those things would surprise us. We've got on the phone with us right now Jeff Poor, host of the Jeff Poor Radio Show, also editor at 1819 News. Jeff, I keep calling you editor at 1819 News, but it seems like the title's bigger than that, like editor for life, editor king. What am I getting that right?
It's editor-in-chief, but I don't really know what that means. I was executive editor, and then apparently I got promoted to editor-in-chief. But keep the titles coming my way.
Did Brian tell you about that promotion, or did you just show up one day and get new business cards?
Yeah, well, he did tell me, and it was very exciting. So I played along. But,
Nothing actually changed, though, did it? I've noticed that every time I give somebody a new title, nothing really changes. They just keep doing what they've always done, which is why we're giving them new titles anyway.
Well, it sounds, like you said, it looks good on a business card, I guess.
It does. It does. And for a resume. Let's talk a little bit about the Choose bill. Flew through the House pretty well. It's been sitting over there percolating in Senate. What changes have been made to the Freedom of Education Choice bill, the Choose bill, Jeff?
Oh, there's been some tweaks here and there. I don't see it going really any big wholesale changes. I think it gets out this week pretty easily. I'll be honest with you. I think a lot of this is kind of a formality right now at this point because there's the opposition. Now the AEA has asked for a cap. They'll try. Maybe they just want to. I don't know. It's funny how this is working out, Scott, because these guys are really more active behind the scenes.
Right.
Whereas, like during the Paul Hubbard era, I mean, it would have been all over the place, right?
Right. You would have had Hubbard in the gallery giving it the thumbs up, thumbs down Caesar move.
Yeah. So I think they're more active than they want to let on. But we saw, when we saw this was in that special election for that state Senate seat, where AA wasn't quite like in front of everything, but they were very active, kind of down on a lower level, not as public, trying to stay out of the media spotlight. Like that's their new tactic. It's like a submarine sort of approach. But that being said, I think they would like to see some changes. But I mean, like it's just going to be tweaks. I think the cooking was already done on this one when I saw Orr, Garrett, and Ivy sort of come together on it.
Right.
And like I said, there may be some tweaks to it, but this is like the way it should be done. Probably, it's very incremental.
And this is just speculation on my part, but it almost feels like AEA early on accepted the inevitability of a school choice bill. It's hitting all the conservative states. They know they're sitting in one of the more conservative states. So it seems to me that a couple of things happen. One is AA realized this is inevitable, and we're probably better to work within it than to just fight against it. And number two, I think regardless of what AEA says publicly, whatever the school board, superintendent, school board association says publicly, I think they've all also accepted this is not going to lead to a mass exodus of public education. Maybe we don't need to flip out over this thing.
Yeah, and I think it's also like maybe for them this is a manageable sort of scenario.
Exactly.
But the longer we let this go on, the more school choice looms, and the more people kind of catch up to it, and maybe perhaps the more they want.
Right.
Let's try to get what we can. Half a loaf is better than no loaf, and move on here. And but I still think they are definitely working behind the scenes to try to minimize this bill as much as possible.
Well, there's $6 billion at stake. Okay, so let's be honest about that. Jeff, we are headed into our top of the hour break. I appreciate you joining us again. I drag you in every time I end up accepting one of these deals where I'm going to sit in and cover for somebody. I make you come with me, and I appreciate that. You're always gracious.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Jeff. That's Jeff Poor, the Jeff Poor Radio Show. If you have not listened to Jeff's show, I highly recommend it. He is one of the best in the business. You'll never, ever get bored listening in. I'm Scott Buttram sitting in for Phil Williams at Rightside Radio. You stay around. We'll be right back.
You're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. I'm Scott Butler from the Trussville Tribune, sitting in today for Phil Williams. He is usually in the driver's seat for Rightside Radio here in the Rightside studios. We're local, state, and national. All the issues, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Welcome back to Rightside Radio. Joining us now is the former chairman of the Republican Party in Jefferson County. He is also the award-winning political columnist for the Trussville Tribune, my friend, Paul DeMarco. Paul, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Scott, I hope you and your listeners are well on this Tuesday afternoon on Election Day.
Hey, how about that intro? Did you feel like you were stepping into a cage match? I wanted to juke it up a little bit more.
Yeah. Please, thank you.
Hey, Paul, I saved this story for you because I knew you'd be excited about it. Our Speaker of the House in Montgomery, Nathaniel Ledbetter, who, by the way, I shall not speak ill of, Mr. Speaker. He has gotten cyber optics about 400 yards from my cabin in Mentone, so he is one of my favorite people in the world right now. But he did release the committee assignments. And I zoomed right in on Judiciary. The chairman, again, will be Representative Jim Hill. Representative Jim, I never met a prisoner I didn't think we should release early. Hill will be chairing the Judiciary Committee. Why do the Republicans in the House need this kind of headache?
Well, look, I know your listeners and on Phil's show are all over North Alabama, but if I could just bring it back to Birmingham for 1 second. Folks say, oh, in Huntsville and Gadsden, well, I don't care. Wait a second. In Birmingham, 2 Fridays ago, you had 6 people murdered on a Friday.
Right.
Then this past week, the horrible rape, torture, and murder of a poor woman in Birmingham. And you're like, well, I don't live there.
8 people so far have been arrested for that rape and murder.
And we could go on and on about the violent crime. And look, there are no fences or walls around the city. I mean, this is happening across the state.
Right.
And you've got these far-left advocacy groups in Montgomery. There are more, I looked it up, there are more lobbyists for these far-left advocacy groups in Montgomery than for crime victims.
Right. And we're talking Alabama Arise, Alabama Appleseed, who
ACLU, just Southern Poverty Law Center.
Exactly. All of them who are looking for big multi-million-dollar grants, and their whole motivation is let's get prisoners out of prison and back on the streets.
And look, there is so much, like you said, out-of-state money pouring in. Look at AL.com, Birmingham News. They just did a series attacking the parole board, attacking Lee Walton, who's been the most professional, best parole board chair we've had in a long time.
Right.
Attacking her because guess what? She actually wants folks to serve their sentences for committing violent crimes. Since 80 to 85% of folks in state prisons are there for violent felonies. And so I bring all this up to say, you say, oh, Paul, we're in a red state. Donald Trump's going to win big. We've got super majorities of Republicans in the House and the Senate and the governor's right. Doesn't matter. Unfortunately, when we look at our legislature, they are passing some legislation. They're passing that is weakening the criminal justice system. So you do have to pay attention to what your state representative and state senator are doing in the halls and chambers of the State House in Montgomery.
Well, and which is why I brought up Representative Jim Hill out of St. Clair County. He's from Odenville. This is part of the Tribune coverage area. We cover parts of St. Clair and Jefferson County. He is typically the Republican who carries the bill for these groups. He was the one that carried the bill that said all prisoners will be released a few months before the end of their sentence. And it's not a bad theory to let them acclimate to life outside. They can move into halfway houses, whatnot. But he pushes that bill. The Republican supermajority approves and supports and votes for that bill. It goes into effect. And the day that they're to release these prisoners, we find out none of the victims have been notified that these people are being released early. There's no means for transportation. They're dumped off at bus stations around the state. So we literally had dozens of people go from state prison to a bus station in your town with no financial means of support, nowhere to go, no victims notified. It was a complete disaster. And now he's going to carry another bill for Alabama Appleseed, I believe.
Well, that's why people have to watch what's going on and talk to their state representative, senator. And look, you and I can talk about it all day, Scott. Folks need to pick the phone and call their state representative, state senator. And look, people say, "Oh, I can't get hold of folks." Well, yes, it is harder to get hold of your congressman, and it shouldn't be. But you could absolutely call your state representative, senator, and they don't call you back. That's a problem.
Right.
Each state representative represents 45,000 people. Each state senator about 150,000 people. There is no reason if you call your state representative or state senator that they should not communicate back with you.
Right.
And if they don't, you need to remember that when they ask for your vote again.
That's right.
And you should make it clear to them that you've got an issue you want to discuss with them.
If you're sitting there wondering, well, how does this really affect me? You know, how do these laws and putting these people back on the streets as quickly, how does that affect me? Call your county sheriff and ask him how it affects you. Because that's who's going to have to clean up the mess. These people will end up back in your yard, back in your town, creating some of the same problems that put them in prison to begin with. And we simply don't need to be doing that in this state. Jim Hill, and I was told, I will say recently, Paul, by a state representative that said, listen, we're paying more attention to legislation that Jim Hill brings to the table these days. We're watching it closer. We're aware of some of the problems. What's Jim Hill's background? Is he a former judge or attorney?
Representative Hill is a former judge from St. Clair County and has always had an excellent reputation. And now, look, I do know that Jim wants to give discretion to more judges. And look, that's fine for St. Clair County where they have excellent judges. In Jefferson County, Montgomery, where you have judges who have campaigned on there's one right now campaigning in Jefferson County right now about, I helped get this person out of jail earlier than their sentence. We don't have truth in sentencing in Alabama.
Right.
In the federal courts, they have truth in sentencing. And I've always said these folks who want to, these people need to get out of jail earlier, well, then that's not fair to the victims and the jury where they thought this person was going to be sentenced to so many years in jail, and yet they're going to get out after a quarter of their sentence.
Right.
And so that's the problem with giving more discretion to some judges in the state, because not every county is the same. You have counties like St. Clair or Blount or Shelby that they are going to give stiff penalties to those who violate crimes. But in Jefferson County, we've seen weaker sentences given to those who commit violent crimes. I've had some police chiefs in Jefferson County say, we're taking stuff to the feds so that we can get stiffer penalties and enhancements.
Just happened in Trussville. Literally just happened in Trussville. A drug bust from about a year ago that the Trussville Police Department knew if this becomes a county issue, nothing's going to happen here. They were able to get the feds to look at it. The feds came in and handled the prosecution. And Trussville faces that. Trussville falls in St. Clair County and in Jefferson County. But if a felon goes to the Jefferson County jail, the outcome is usually quite different than if a felon goes to the St. Clair County jail and goes through the court system in St. Clair County. They're usually held accountable, whereas in Jefferson County, the first thing everybody looks for is a plea bargain. And they can almost always guarantee that they will get it from the Jefferson County District Attorney. Paul, we're coming up on our first break, and I've asked you to sit in with us for most of the 3 o'clock hour. Can you hang around, and we'll be right back?
I can.
Thank you, Paul. Scott Buttram sitting in for Phil Williams here at Rightside Radio. We'll be back after this break. You stay with us. Welcome back to Rightside Radio. I'm Scott Buttram, sitting in today for Phil Williams, and on the line with me is Paul DeMarco. He is our political columnist at the Trussville Tribune. Paul, you've won a few awards. We put you up for a few more this week. We'll have to see how that pans out, but man, you do a great job keeping our audience in touch with what's going on in Montgomery, and I appreciate you coming on with us here on Rightside Radio to kind of share that same information with our audience here. I want to shift gears a little bit. We spent some time in the first segment talking about legislation that we need to be aware of and keep our eye on, because there are huge nonprofit groups that are out there continuously working to get more and more criminals back on the street in the state of Alabama. But I want to shift gear and talk politics a little bit, and I'm going to tap in because this is not in your neck of the woods. You don't have a dog in the fight, which is why I really kind of want to hear your opinion on today's Super Tuesday race. It felt a little anticlimactic for me. There's nothing big brewing in Alabama, but we do have a pretty hotly contested congressional race between the incumbent, Jerry Carl, Representative Jerry Carl, and he is running against another incumbent, but no longer has a district, and that is Representative Barry Moore. Can you kind of weigh in? What are you seeing on that, Paul? And do you have a prediction on how this could play out today?
Yeah, I was actually on the phone with some folks from that district earlier today. It is a shame that the court ruling came down in the way it did, and
right.
That part of that district it goes all the way from Mobile to Henry County, Abbeville, right there, borders with Georgia. So it's a shame that happened. And then the other district starts at Dauphin Island, goes to Phoenix City. So,
right.
When I was in the legislature and we did redistricting, it was always about, don't forget communities of interest. Yeah. I mean, think if you were in a district in Gadsden and then they put you with Dothan, you'd be like, wait a second.
Right. You lose your voice. You lose your voice when that happens.
Yeah. And look, we know the way these districts, and folks say, well, why do we here, wasn't it? But that really was an issue. And look, we all know this is not over. I mean, the Supreme Court could end up ruling, and we could go back to the districts they were before.
Right.
So we're waiting to see what happens, but this election cycle's here. This is what it's going to be, at least for the foreseeable future, unless they come back and change it to where it was before. And I do think there's a possibility, because since this ruling in the 11th Circuit Supreme Court has allowed it, there have been a couple other rulings about who can proceed with these lawsuits. It can't just be some groups out there. There's got to be somebody that can force these lawsuits. And then there was, I think, a ruling in North Carolina. And so we'll see what happens ultimately. But as for today's race, it's here, and we'll know at 8 o'clock. If you look at the race, Representative Carl lives in Mobile, was the Mobile County Commissioner.
Right.
But how this redistricting hurt him, the way the court drew it drew a big chunk of Mobile out of the district. So that was his base.
Yeah.
That was his base. But he did represent Baldwin County for a couple of years, so he does have ties to Baldwin County. But then you've got Barry Moore, who had the Wiregrass, but obviously that's not where the population center was in the district, nor the financial base where it could raise money. And
right.
So I think what people who live in that district are telling me is, what do the people in, and you spend a lot of time in Baldwin County, more time I know up in North Alabama and DeKalb County, but Robertsdale and Summerdale and Foley, how do they vote? Daphne and Spanish Fork. That's where the population base of this new 2nd Congressional District, which you would say, hey, well, if that's the case, that would be for Representative Carl's advantage, because he's already represented that district. And it's kind of, Mobile and Baldwin, the Gulf Coast, those two, Mobile and Baldwin County, very similar, that they both are the shipping and fishing and tourism and all that. However, Baldwin County is pretty conservative.
Right.
And so that's what makes this race just a dead heat. And I really do think it is going to be, whoever wins will be within 2 to 4 points. 52-48. There was some polls. There was one poll that had Barry Moore winning by 10, and then there was one that came out this week that had Jerry winning by 7. I don't believe either one of those polls.
Okay,
I think it's going to be very close.
You answered the next question because that was it. I'm kind of watching this from afar. It felt at times like Barry Moore's message was resonating a little bit more with that district to me, and that's just gauging what I'm seeing online. And then I read the polling that comes out over the weekend. I can't remember who was the polling. Was that from Auburn, AUM, Auburn Montgomery? And they're showing Jerry Carl with a significant lead. And I kind of threw my hands up and said, I'm just not sure I've got a feel for this election at all, this race. And it doesn't sound like I'm off in left field if I don't know what's going on, because it doesn't sound like anybody knows for sure.
People who are down there and who are actually voting in that district think it's a toss-up, again, because of the way it was redistricting, which meant that Baldwin County became the population. And look, you tell me, has Baldwin County bypassed Shelby County or Madison or Limestone is the fastest growing county in the state? I know they're all pretty close.
Yep.
They've all growing so quickly, but if you look at the census data, all of that area down there are some of the fastest growing cities in the state are in Baldwin County, and since that is the population center of that district, of that new congressional district 1, that's where they believe the race will be decided. And today was supposed to be a rain out, but I haven't seen a lot of rain today, so they thought that was going to affect the rain. I don't know what it looks like in South Alabama, but up here in North Alabama, I think it's had any effect.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. We had Jeff Poore on last hour, and one of the comments I made to Jeff, this Super Tuesday feels more anticlimactic than any in memory for me. I'm assuming that's because we have the rare situation where the Republican and Democratic nominees really are foregone conclusions as far as the presidential race goes, but just not a lot of competitive races in the state this year other than the one we've been talking about. Does it feel anticlimactic to you? I mean, you're much more in tune with politics in the state, or do you have some level of excitement today? Is there something you're waiting to see?
Well, I've gotten lots of phone calls because there are a number of races across the state. There, statewide races, there's school board races, and there's congressional races.
Hey, Paul, I'm gonna have to make this a cliffhanger. We're headed to a break, okay. So I'm gonna let you wait till after the break to share your prognostication there and kind of fill us in on what you're feeling. All right.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you. Paul DeMarco is with us. I'm Scott Buttram, sitting in for Phil Williams here at Rightside Radio. Hang tight. We'll be back. Welcome back to Rightside Radio. I'm Scott Buttram from the Trussville Tribune. I'm sitting in today for Phil Williams, but Phil is in the building. We're probably going to hear from him in our last hour. He's going to come spend some time with us in the studio, and you'll hear from the man who runs this seat every day, and excited about that. On the line with us right now is the political columnist for the Trussville Tribune, a guy we're proud of. He wins a lot of awards for our newspaper. And keeps his finger on politics in Alabama. Paul DeMarco. Paul, thank you for being with us. He was with us for the whole first half hour, and he's going to be with me till 4 because I'm making him stay. And Paul, we appreciate you still there.
Absolutely. Glad to be with you and your listeners today.
I kid around with Jeff Poore. I've got certain friends in this field. Every time I fill in a spot like this, I drag all of you guys with me, so I apologize for monopolizing y'all's time. I want to throw an interesting question. I've got my thoughts on this. This comes from one of our listeners out there, John from Huntsville. John is our constant encourager. That I look forward to hearing from John every time I come on this show. But he sent a text, and he's got a good question here. Again, I got my thoughts. I want to hear your thoughts. He wants to know who we think the vice president pick will be for Trump.
Do I get 3 names, or do I have to? You
can throw 3 names out there. You can throw 3 because we're trying to figure out who he would pick, and I also want to hear from you who you think he should pick.
I think you have. So look, he had Mike Pence. It will not be Mike Pence, right?
It will not be Mike Pence.
Start there.
we can remove him from the list of consideration.
So Donald Trump's prism he's looking at when he's picking his vice president, he wants somebody that he has a relationship with, that he's familiar with. So which makes you thinking, okay, well, some people have said Tim Scott. I mean, other than this race, does he know Tim Scott? And so the question is President Trump looking for a vice president that's going to bringing South Carolina? Well, picking Tim Scott now. Will that get him in the minority community? He thinks that will bring those voters along. I don't know if that is a decision maker there. So then he says, do I go with someone like a Kristi Noem, who has been very loyal to me, who did not run for election, because, that will help me on the ticket. Does he go to somebody like a Ron DeSantis, who he obviously was not happy he ran, but I think it's hard to disagree that Ron DeSantis has been one of the best governors in this country and has shown it with his results. Here's, though, who I would say is in the top 3. Governor Huckabee from Arkansas. Because he's comfortable with her.
Right.
She brings that that she's not Donald Trump, but she is a strong conservative, but people like her. She won convincingly in Arkansas. Obviously Arkansas is not a big state, but that she seems like she's someone that could turn right around. And being a governor, it's like, hey, I've got executive experience. I've got Washington, D.C. experience. So I would say she's got to be in the top 3. And I haven't heard her say, no, I do not want to be considered. I just think that she is going to be one of his top 3 picks. As we get closer to the convention, I think you're going to start hearing her name swirl more and more around as one of the folks that he might pick.
Okay. So would that be your lean? Would Sarah Huckabee be your lean?
Yeah, I know it really would be. I think that is somebody who he feels very comfortable with, who has now got, who's got governor by her name, who can say now she's been in the governor's office, I think, for about a year now, maybe. Right. Maybe it's less, who's got that experience. And since she's been governor, she's made had tax reform, done a lot of stuff. So she can say, I've got some experience behind the name. But, does he go? I don't think he goes to anybody in the United States Senate. And I have not heard him talk about anybody in the United States Senate other than Tim Scott. I mean, I've not heard a Ted Cruz or Rand Paul or any of those names. I've not heard anybody else in the Senate that he said considering. I mean, I think the names you keep on hearing are Kerry Lake, who's running for the Senate in Arizona, and we can talk about that in a second. But I just don't see that. They keep on talking about Tim Scott.
I don't think Kerry Lake helps him.
No, she doesn't. And look, she's had some fights with Republicans in Arizona, and I think they need to get it together now with Kristen Sinema dropping out of the race. They need to figure out how to take that, because the Republicans have a really good chance to pick up the Senate this year. So that needs to be one of the pickups is Arizona. So I don't see her. There's been a lot of talk about Kristi Noem, and she's been a ardent supporter of the president, but I just don't see her being the pick either. So, that's why you get back to kind of a Tim Scott or a Sarah Huckabee. A lot of folks have talked about Ron DeSantis. You may say there's just zero chance based on just how much they went after each other.
Mm-hmm.
The people around him may say no, we don't. But so the question is he picking somebody that's like, when you're voting for Donald Trump, are you really voting for him because of who his vice presidential nominee is? Yes or no?
Yeah, I
don't think so.
I think there will be enough voters up for grabs in this election. People who have walked away from Biden, that I think the vice president role could play a bigger part than it did in 2016. Nobody jumped on Trump's bandwagon because of Mike Pence, depending on who he picks this time.
Yeah.
I think
nobody cared about Mike Pence.
Yeah, nobody cared. I mean, he was just a safe pick. I think Tim Scott is in consideration. I think that Kristi Noem is in consideration. I think between the two, Noem may help him more. If there's not a conversation in the Trump camp about DeSantis, and knowing the Trump camp, it's hard to say what they're discussing. But to me, picking Ron DeSantis absolutely guarantees a victory over Biden. I think a lot of people who may not be comfortable with Trump would be comfortable knowing DeSantis is in the second chair, and I think they would go support that. I think a big factor may actually take place when Senator Katie Britt delivers the Republican response to Biden's speech. I think just seeing her in that position, I'm not so sure she is out of the realm of possibility of being chosen by Trump. I think he likes her very much. I think he likes what she can deliver to the ticket. I'm not sure where she sees that from her political future. I haven't had that conversation with her, so I don't have any idea what her thoughts are in that regard. But I see somebody like Katie Britt as someone who could strengthen his ticket tremendously. But I think Ron DeSantis, if they can get over the personal attacks, that Ron DeSantis delivers the White House back to Trump.
Absolutely. If they say, look, we're doing this because we have got to beat the current occupant of the White House. And look, if you put Ron DeSantis on a stage with Kamala Harris, or you could put Ron DeSantis on a stage with Joe Biden,
yep.
And President Trump says, look, we had our disagreements, but we're going to work together, because everyone knows. I mean, that's like, if you ask a Democrat and say, look, I know you don't like Donald Trump, and so I know you're going to vote for Joe Biden. If you ask somebody who's going to vote for Joe Biden, say, do you really feel comfortable with who's going to follow him with Kamala Harris?
Right.
Even the Democrats are not comfortable with that.
No, the majority of Democrats are not comfortable with he or Kamala Harris. And if you're Ron DeSantis, you've already made the decision to wait 4 years. I mean, you withdrew from this race. You've made up your mind, I'm going to wait 4 years. Well, what is the difference in serving that 4 years as the governor of Florida or serving that 4 years as the vice president of the United States and being in a prime position to serve as president for 8 years following that? I think DeSantis would come on board easier than Trump would be convinced to bring him on board.
No, I agree with you.
And we've seen Donald Trump make decisions that were not in his best interest before.
Well, you nailed it. That if President Trump picked Ron DeSantis, I think the amount of this is a winning ticket, would just be huge, because people have seen the success in Florida. I mean, Ron DeSantis took on Disney. That's in Florida.
Yeah, and won.
No governor has done that before. So,
how important?
But he'll have a lot of surrogates out there campaigning for him, whether they're picked or not. Senator Britt and Governor Nome and,
right.
and Governor Huckabee and Senator Scott. So you're going to have all these folks around the country, even if they're not the vice presidential nominee, they're going to be out there spending all summer on his behalf.
I agree. The Biden experience has been so bad that I think Republicans will have little to no problem being united behind Trump and whoever he picks. And just to throw this out there, we know that, and especially with Biden, before he ever picked someone for the Supreme Court, he said the next nominee for the Supreme Court will be a black female. We feel like he picked Kamala Harris because of the demographic she represented. Is that as important on the Republican side?
No, I think folks want to see someone who can step in and actually be president if something happens. But isn't that why we have a vice president? I mean, look, what did Ron Pence or any vice president do for the 4 years? They went out and went to funerals and did this and that. But really, you got to have somebody who can step in. When President McKinley was assassinated, Teddy Roosevelt stepped up to the plate, and we could go on and on. That's what you need to have. It's somebody who can step up to serve as president.
Right.
And that's what we're all looking for.
And the names we've mentioned would all be good candidates. Don't you agree?
Yeah. Oh, I know. I think all of them could absolutely step up and serve as president. Look, they've all had more experience than Barack Obama had, right?
Right.
I mean, or as much experience.
And as much as Trump had in 2016.
Yeah. Well, and again, I mean, some of the experience in Washington, D.C. is bad experience. I mean,
right, that's right.
He served in the U.S. Senate. Look what a disaster that is, where they've ignored the border and have worried more about Ukraine's border than our own border. So, look, this election cycle, and maybe you're right that people are going to be looking at the vice president, but at the end of the day, it is really going to be Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. And do these independents, I mean, look what happened in Michigan, these uncommitted. And a lot of folks say, oh, that just has to do with the what's going on in the Middle East. If you're an auto worker in Michigan, how can you be happy with this presidency pushing the Green Deal and, every car has to be an electric vehicle and we're going to get rid of it is crazy. So they're overlooking these blue-collar workers in Michigan who have always made Michigan a blue state when Michigan could end up going to Donald Trump.
Right.
Because of the energy policy. It's the same thing with Pennsylvania. I don't know how Pennsylvania voted for Joe Biden last time, considering his terrible energy policy.
Yeah, it is, and the auto industry in general should be concerned. But how do people? I don't know that we learn from other mistakes. I don't know that we learn from prior mistakes. We've got all of the auto plants in Alabama now, again, considering going union. Those guys know the only reason those auto plants are in Alabama is because it was a non-union state. And, they've gotten this benefit. They've gotten these great jobs. They've gotten a great future. And they're going to, vote again on whether or not they want to become part of the union, which is what destroyed the industry in Michigan and brought it to Alabama to begin with. I don't know that people learn from their mistakes. We keep repeating the same ones over and over.
You're exactly right. I mean, we have attracted all of this manufacturing because folks didn't want to go. They were looking around. They didn't want to go to Michigan, and I hope we're not going to be right where we were before, because Alabama has attracted all of these. We got the tort reform when we had these huge verdicts. We said, look, you can build a manufacturing facility here. We're a good business climate. We've got great workforce development. And we don't have some of these crazy issues that you've seen in other states, and that's why you saw Amazon. And look, we're already having some of that going on. Was it a Starbucks that unionized up in Scottsboro?
Yeah. The workplace dangers that these poor people face serving coffee every day. Hey, Paul, we need to get to a quick break. We'll come back for a short segment. When we come back, I want to get into some of the legislation floating around Montgomery right now and get your take on some of that. If you guys can stay with us, we'll be back. You hang around. And we're back. This is Scott Buttram from the Trussville Tribune sitting in for Phil Williams here at Rightside Radio. And on the line with us is Paul DeMarco, the political columnist for us at the Trussville Tribune. Paul does a great job. We can hit a lot of topics with Paul. That's why we wanted him on for an extended period today. Paul, I want you to talk about, just kind of update some of the legislation going on in Montgomery. And we don't have long. We've got about 5 minutes and about 3 minutes in this whole segment. But first, before you get into that, real quick, your reaction to the Supreme Court ruling unanimously that Donald Trump cannot be removed from the ballot. What do you think about that ruling, and how bad do the judges in Colorado look right now?
They look terrible. Can you imagine if the Supreme Court had said, yeah, every state can make that decision? Well, I mean, how many states would start talking about removing Joe Biden?
Yeah.
And so talk about really a division of this country more than it really is. It's one thing for folks to have opinions of the candidates, but voters should have the final say in the fall who the president. It shouldn't be a Secretary of State in Colorado, Maine, or Illinois making that decision.
I agree with that completely. And let's talk a little bit, and I'm going to focus in on two pieces of legislation, the Choose Act and the gambling legislation. Where do those two issues stand right now based on what you're hearing?
Well, the educational choice act will be in the Senate. I expect it'll be at the governor's desk by the end of the week.
Wow.
Unless there are some sort of amendments in the Senate. Now, look, it is easier to filibuster or kill a bill in the Senate than it is in the House.
Right.
So the question is, are opponents of that bill, which will probably be every Democrat, how much time and effort do they put into trying to kill this bill in the Senate? Do they, do they spend all day and go on and it forces the Republicans to cloture a filibuster? Or do they try to add some amendments? Or do they just say, we're going to talk and just, if you want to stop it? So we'll see what happens with that. But I expect it to pass and be in the governor's desk before the end of the week.
Okay. What about the gambling legislation?
Well, this has taken a lot of here and there, and I hear there's a complete substitute bill. So you voted for it in the House. You voted on something that was dramatically changed. I've heard some folks say it will not be taken back up until after the 2-week recess that'll start soon in the House, in both House and Senate. Others are saying they're going to try to move that quickly. The longer it goes, the less chance. Even if they make the changes, you haven't seen what it's going to look like. I haven't seen. Really need to see what changes there are in this new bill. Again, you and I saw the first one. It was a completely corrupt bill.
Yeah, absolutely corrupt.
This bill is going to pass so we can get rid of illegal gambling. It gave amnesty to illegal gambling, and it said the only folks that can enforce it is this gaming commission.
No, it did more than that, Paul. Not only did it give immunity to it, it gave monopolies to the very counties in Alabama that have been violating the gambling laws for 25 years. It hands them a monopoly. And let's remember, that corruption went to the highest law enforcement official in that county. Even the sheriffs were involved in looking the other way. Paul, we've got to hit a hard break now. Thank you so much for giving us the entire 3 o'clock hour. We appreciate it. We appreciate all you do at the Trussville Tribune. All of the Rough Side Ruffians, hang around. We'll be back after this break, and we'll be joined by the master himself. Phil Williams will step into the studio and join us in the last hour.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Welcome back to Alabama syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. I'm Scott Buttram from the Trussville Tribune, sitting in today for Phil Williams. Phil was in court, but Phil is in the building and will be joining us very shortly for our last hour of Rightside Radio. You heard from Paul DeMarco in the last hour. Paul is our political columnist at the Trussville Tribune, former state legislator, also former director or president, I think, of the Alabama Jefferson County Republican Party, very much in touch. You guys may remember Paul ran for the open congressional seat against, how did the name just get completely out of my head? He ran against Gary, and here comes Phil. He's going to have, I just forgot our congressman's name, Gary Palmer. There it is. So DeMarco ran against him, and when that seat was open and Gary Palmer won the seat, Paul DeMarco, to his credit, did not get out of politics. He has continued to work behind the scenes, and that's good for the state of Alabama. He is a law and order guy. So that's one of the things he is always watching down in Montgomery are the law and order bills. He's not a fan of turning criminals loose early. Does that mean everything was off then, or did you just come on?
I just came on.
Just came on.
Hey, everybody.
I'm seeing buttons get pushed. Phil's with us now. So how did you end up here? Did court end early today?
Yeah, so yes, thank you to all of my listeners out there for the grace of being allowed to have a day off on Monday and B, to be in court on Tuesday. So
you've been busy, and you got a busy week ahead. Yeah,
it's like every day, man. One day God's going to say you're allowed to have one job now. That'll be awesome.
Well, we've had a good time on the show. I always have a good time when you're not here. It's I'm the substitute teacher, so everybody gets
a good time when I'm not here.
Yeah, because I let the kids do whatever they want. The substitute teacher lets the kids act up. You come in and make everybody behave. But we opened the show with a topic. I've just got a gut feeling you're going to have an opinion on this.
Oh, now what's up?
President Joseph Biden has admitted that his administration flew in 320,000 illegal immigrants. They did not come through the border. That's the good news, Phil. They didn't line up and cause chaos at the border. We flew them directly in from foreign airports. They did not stop at go. They did not collect $200. They went straight to their destination.
From what I gathered, they literally had an app on their phone.
Yes.
And they said from somewhere afar, like they're down in Colombia or Costa Rica, they're like, I feel threatened. There's a flight waiting for you at the airport.
Right.
Don't worry about TSA. Just come on in.
So we funded their flight. We're funding their stay.
Yeah.
They have 2 years of workers' rights immediately, automatically.
What the heck, man?
Well, at what point do we just admit that we have a president committing treason? I mean, he is inviting an invasion into our country through the border, and now we know that he's flying them directly into the country.
Completely blowing off our immigration laws.
Completely blowing off the immigration laws.
And I tell you what's maddening for me, Scott, and I've said it on my show multiple times, I've got a family member who is dear to me who is a naturalized citizen, and she came here the right way, went through the processes, became a part of our country, is just as American as anybody else.
Right.
And she cared enough to do it right. And I was telling somebody earlier today about this same issue. When all of this started, when Biden started just like erasing Trump policies and signing new executive orders, and my first thought was it was going to wind up proving to be just, liberal policies mixed with ineptitude. I've decided this has been an absolutely intentional thing.
I believe it is too. And I think we can debate what their goal is, because I think it could realistically be a couple of different goals here. But Phil, I'm like you. I value immigrants in this country. My grandmother was a first-generation American.
Yeah.
Her grandparent or her parents came here to this country as teenagers. Their parents went back to France. They stayed and made their own life. I know how my grandmother and her siblings were raised, and the small things, My great-grandparents, who spoke only French when they came, refused to speak French in front of their own children. They wouldn't do it. They learned English. They spoke English in that house. And my grandmother and all of her siblings will tell you when they got a little older in school, they kind of resented that because they could have had a pretty free French credit at any school, but their French parents refused to speak French. They wanted their children acclimated into the United States. They wanted them to be fully American. They made all the sacrifices it took to get here. I got a problem with people crawling over the wall.
I absolutely agree.
Got a problem with that.
I had a friend of mine years ago, a coworker actually, and she was from one of the Latin American countries, and she came here the same way. Her family she was a first generation, and she grew up in a family where everybody had an accent, but they always spoke English because her grandmother said, "This is our new home, and we will act like this is our new home."
Yeah, it's ironic. One of the things my great-grandfather, which, by the way, he was still around when I was born. I count myself so fortunate. I knew 3 of my great-grandparents and 2 of my great-grandmothers, and I just know most people don't get that opportunity. But I know this, one of the things that my great-grandfather was most proud of was that every one of his sons and both sons-in-law all served in World War II. And he told that story for the rest of his life, that all of his boys, by birth or by marriage, served in World War II. That meant the world to him. And of course, who were they liberating?
Well, yeah, about to say it, exactly. And I tell you who it meant the world to is us as a country. And I just don't feel that level of buy-in anymore.
No.
I mean, what I feel like now is there is an entitlement horde coming across the wall.
There is.
There's an entitlement horde that is coming in saying, "Where's my stuff? You said you'd give me stuff. I want stuff." And if we don't give them stuff, suddenly they're mad, like they were supposed to get stuff.
Well, Phil, it's on video. I mean, they're beating, shooting New York police officers, American citizens. These cases against illegal immigrants and the crime that they are sweeping through the country right now, this is stacking up. This is getting more and more frequent. I picked up the newspaper this morning. 2 more crimes by illegal immigrants.
Yeah.
It is a danger to our country. But they beat up a police officer in New York. Beat up 2 police officers. They're leaving the jail, and we all saw it. The video of the suspect flipping his finger at the camera,
laughing.
Yeah, it goes back to your statement earlier. You nailed it. These people are coming here with an entitlement in their mind, and that's not the way Americans are taught. We're taught that we earn it. We earn it.
Taught that the American dream is the hard work that goes with getting the reward at the end. And right now, what I'm seeing is literally there's an air of expectation at every given turn, and there's also just an air of, you will excuse me because you will have to, because I'm here because I wanted to be, and you don't have a say in it.
Right.
And I'm sorry, I thought there was a process for this. But this whole thing about flying them in, using the app to just declare their concerns and then being flown here, we are literally importing trouble at that point. That's all that is.
We are, and we're bringing in, well, let's go to we talked about this earlier as well. 450 Chinese nationalists cross our border an entire year.
By the way, don't tell me China doesn't know they're here.
Yeah.
I mean,
20,000 cross in 1 month after 450 in an entire year. China doesn't just know they're here. China handpicked them.
China made sure they had just the right comrades to come on over. Yeah, next to North Korea, there is no other country that is so capable of tracking and controlling its citizens' whereabouts. And China absolutely knows where their people are.
Right, and we can't send them back. We can't send them back. We have no agreement to send them back. We can't even land an airplane in China without China's permission. We're stuck with them.
We could take them to Taiwan.
Well, maybe that may be what China's hoping for. We could deliver their first battalion to Taiwan for them.
But you're bringing up a point, though, the deportations, because the other one that closed the door on deportation is Venezuela.
Right.
They emptied their jails. They sent us the worst they've got, and they're snickering while we're dealing with the Venezuelan crime going on in our streets. And they've also said we will not take them back. And I'm not sure how that works because I'm pretty sure we could fly them somewhere and just drop them off. But the thing is, we won't.
We
And
won't.
So when Trump comes into office, which I believe he will, I mean, at this point, we're going to see Super Tuesday. He still won't have enough delegates, but I think we're going to wind up seeing very soon he will.
I feel like Haley's got to make a decision tomorrow.
Yeah.
I mean, the handwriting's going to be on the wall at the close of polls today.
Well, she won D.C.
Well, that won't get her there. I did the math.
No, it won't. But with Trump talking the other day about the largest deportation in world history is going to
Right.
occur once, and I'm thinking, first of all, okay, how do you do that? What is the logistical apparatus you use to do that? I don't know that it winds up becoming the U.S. military. I hope not. But I also look at it and go, okay, there's going to be hell to pay. Stand by. Liberals are going to freak out when we start gathering people up. They're going to freak out when crying babies and mothers are put on a plane and sent back to the country they said they were scared of. Anyway.
My concern is what legal rights did they obtain just by crossing into the country? I'm not so sure they don't have a legal standing at this point, thanks to the Biden administration.
Well, and that's a classic case of why Trump's going to have a Congress to work with.
Right.
We got to take a break, bro.
Let's do it. We'll be back. This is Rightside Radio sitting in. I'm Scott Buttram sitting in for Phil Williams, and Phil Williams is sitting right across the desk, so we're all here.
I'm loving being second chair, man. This is awesome.
Stay with us. This is Rightside Radio. This is Scott Butler sitting in for Phil Williams, but right across the desk is Phil Williams.
Making common sense like a superpower.
All is right in the world. The former senator is here with us today. Phil, we were talking before the break about the disaster that is Joe Biden and this administration.
It's a little scary, actually.
It is. And that led to some conversation about vice president picks for Trump. We've had that conversation earlier, a little bit with Paul DeMarco, a little bit with Jeff Bohr. I'm interested in your thoughts. And I don't, I'm always on the other side here, so I get to interview you today. Who is Trump's? And first, let's do it the way Paul DeMarco and I approached it. Who are three people you think are in consideration, and who of the three do you think would be the best pick for Donald Trump as vice president?
Well, I'll go ahead and address the Alabama elephant in the room. So first of all, there's been this kind of whisper campaign about the idea that it could be Katie Britt. Would I love to see Alabama's Katie Britt be vice president of the United States? Darn right. But I will say too that my anticipation is that probably not, just because of her being the freshman senator. She's got such a dynamic role in the Senate. I think she's got a career that she can grow if she wants to. And she got young kids. So I just can't help but think that probably not right now. But anyway, I'm saying that I would love to see Katie Britt in a role like that, but I don't think it's going to be this time.
Yeah.
What I do anticipate is that, Sarah Huckabee Sanders is on my short list.
Okay.
I say that because the comment I think I made to you during the break was she's one of the few people that came out of his last administration with all of her hair and teeth intact.
I agree. Yeah.
It's hard to work for Trump. You gotta know where you stand at all times and be willing to give what you get. We've seen some good people go by the wayside.
You've got to be willing to give Trump loyalty that you very well may not get in return.
That's exactly right. And you also got to be willing to, when the heat comes up, you've got to be able to stand your ground effectively and do so mano a mano. I think he respects that.
Right.
But anyway, the bottom line is I would see Sarah Huckabee Sanders on the list. I'll be honest with you, I see Ron DeSantis on the list.
I think he should be on the list.
I think if Ron DeSantis is on the list and DeSantis is going to have to make that same kind of decision-making process that says, I've watched Trump ruin some careers before. I don't know if I want to be that guy.
Right.
But this is a one-term Trump administration. He has a chance to come in, be the vice president, and then very likely the nominee for the next go-round.
Right.
At which point I could see Katie Britt being the vice president. But So Ron DeSantis is my first choice for VP. Does he want the female vote? Does he want something from a state that's harder to get? I mean, Florida has huge electoral, and he's very popular in Florida. Or DeSantis is,
Right.
But then it's kind of like we got the president and the vice president both for Florida because that's where his residence is.
Yeah, and both popular there, and Trump is likely to carry Florida.
I think that's true. Does DeSantis want another role? What other role would you want? You're governor of Florida.
Right.
And you're in a safe seat for right now where you are. So Ron DeSantis still, I think, number one. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, 2 or 3. And then my third, I really liked the governor of Iowa, but she did endorse DeSantis over Trump, and I don't know that he'll go back to her for that.
Right.
I don't see Kristi Noem. I know I'm losing one.
She's a popular.
Oh, Tim Scott.
Yeah,
I still like Tim Scott. I was thinking of governors, but I think Tim Scott, South Carolina is a good ticket to pull. It takes away the folks that were being loyal to Haley because she's from South Carolina, and then it also draws in what I think is a very important demographic right now is the black vote.
Let's talk briefly about what's coming up Thursday night. We've got the president will address the country, arguably the worst communicator in the history of the United States White House. The rebuttal will come from arguably the best communicator in the United States Senate in Senator Katie Britt from Alabama.
Yeah.
How big is that contrast going to be for the American people?
Well, the contrast is huge, and they knew exactly what they were doing.
Yes.
They got youthful dynamism compared to aged out infirmity.
Yeah.
And the disparity between the two is going to be unreal. He's going to be doing all he can. I mean, how many B12 shots does he have to have before he goes up there? I have no idea.
He better take a lot, because I believe Senator Katie Britt is going to open up a can. I believe she's going.
Oh my gosh.
I'm expecting Biden to make a campaign speech. I think that's what he's going to use this for. It's going to be a veiled campaign speech, and I think he's going to get hit right between the eyes by about a 5'5" woman that packs more punch than her 6'9" husband.
Which is always funny seeing them stand side by side. So Biden, I'll be honest with you, I worry about him getting through it.
Yeah.
I worry about him getting through it, and maybe we can talk about it more after this break. But I'll be honest with you, this is, and you got to know his staff's on pins and needles about this right now.
Yeah, it's probably not going to be a good scene. This is Scott Buttram sitting in for Phil Williams, who's sitting across the desk here at Rightside Radio. We flipped the tables. I'm interviewing Phil. We're going to take a quick break.
This is awesome.
When we come back, we've got more questions for the master.
Yeah, well, I don't know about the master, but I'm happy to be here. I know that.
welcome back to Rightside Radio. I'm Scott Butler from the Trussville Tribune, sitting in for Phil Williams, who is sitting in across the desk there.
I am here, man. And, I tell you what, let's do this more often. You just drop in and we'll just banter.
Hey, man, this is an easy trip for me. We could make this happen when we need to.
You're right down the road. Why not?
Yeah, it's less than an hour away to Trussville, and I can get back there. We're about to be joined by Danny Garrett, Representative Danny Garrett from Trussville. You know Danny. He is the chair of the Education Ways and Means Committee in the House, so he got all the money over there. We're going to get some updates. First on our gambling bill, and I know neither you nor I are in favor of that bill progressing, but also want to talk to him a little bit about the Choose Act. Paul DeMarco says he thinks that that's going to be on the governor's desk by the end of the week. What are you hearing? What's your thoughts on those two bills? Those are two big pieces everybody's watching.
So I was about to take a look and see if there have been any updates, but the Senate committee that was considering the gambling bill actually did not meet today. They came together and they left again with no bill. But there was talk of them coming back in today around 4. So I need to check with Mary.
Okay.
I think you got Danny on the line right now, though. Why don't you just go ahead and grab him real quick?
All right, Representative Danny Garrett from Trussville is joining us now. Danny, thank you for making the time. And hey, it's not just me. We've also got Phil here in the office. He showed back up.
Oh, great. Great. Hey, hello, Phil. How you doing?
I'm good, brother. I came in just to wear you out, man.
I think he actually heard me on there and panicked a little bit.
Just stand in line. Stand in line. Okay.
That's it. Danny, we were just talking about the two, and there's a lot of legislation going on, and there are a lot of big bills to be dealt with, but the two that's kind of got everyone's attention, the Choose Act on school choice, Education Alabama. You sponsored that bill in the House, did a masterful job getting it out and over to the Senate. And then, of course, the gambling legislation. Those are the two that everybody's keeping an eye on. I'm going to tell you, we had Paul DeMarco in the last hour. Paul tells me he expects the school choice bill to be on the governor's desk by the end of the week. Where do you see those two pieces of legislation?
I think the school choice bill has a lot of inertia. It's interesting, as I was waiting on your call there, I got a text, and the bill was supposed to be in the Senate committee tomorrow. It's in the Senate committee as we speak.
Yeah.
So I was actually listening to it when you called. So I would expect it would be voted out of committee. I think the Senate will pass it, and assuming they pass it with no changes, which is, I think, very possible.
Okay.
The governor could sign it this week.
Danny, staying with the Choose Act, some minor changes were made coming out of the House, and you and I, but just so folks in this audience may not be aware, you and I go way back, long before you ever entered the legislature, and long before I bought a newspaper. So we've always had very candid conversations. There were some changes made to the the Choose Act before it came out of the House, and I was texting you, and you had no concern with those changes. You said they were very minor. Is that still the only changes that have taken place?
Yes, there were clarifications. There were some guardrails that gave some of the education providers comfort. In other words, one was that we have a minimum $100 million appropriation per year. We would not increase that minimum level unless there was a 90% take up, and in reality we wouldn't do that anyway, probably.
Right.
So I think things like that were fine. So again, some clarifications, nothing was concerned. Actually, I think the changes actually tightened the bill up, made it a better policy vehicle. So
hey Danny, this is Phil. Let me ask you, one of the questions that came up was the difference in the amounts allowed for homeschool versus brick and mortar schools. Is that going to stay the same in the Senate? Do you see anything changing with that?
I don't see that changing. In fact, I just had several people in my office today who were not meeting with me about that bill, but they were educators, and they had one of them was telling me how they had educated their two children, and that they said, we wish we had $4,000 for my two children, because that would have been more than enough. For it just doesn't cost as much for a homeschool parent to educate. And I mean, people can debate whether or not this argument had on the one hand the moving a child from a zip code to another to another zip code. And then on this other end of the spectrum was just parents' rights, And I mean, so what we've done here with this bill, I think it's hit kind of a sweet spot. We've addressed the concerns and the needs of both of those groups, but I think each group would probably like a little more, or a little less. But yeah, I don't think that homeschool amount will change. I'll be honest. In the House, it was took some work to get the House to buy in, even on anything with homeschool, because there's a strong contingency in the House among some rural Republicans not to include homeschool in the program, and I think people's experiences with homeschool are different. My experience with homeschoolers from the areas that I represent are generally very positive. Some people have other perspectives, so that was a tough sell in the House, but we got over the hump based on the language in the bill.
Hey, and Danny, let me ask you one more question too that I've not heard anybody talk about. This was a bill. I mean, school choice polls incredibly high. It really, in a bipartisan fashion, it polls well. I mean, there's hardly any way to go wrong in terms of the eyes of the voters with a bill like this. There were, I think, 6 Republicans in the House that voted against the legislation when it was on the floor. I'm not going to ask you to, to call them out or say anything, but I was a little surprised. Was there anything in particular about it? Was it because they just don't like school choice, do you know, or was it because they were concerned with a provision of the bill? What took 6 Republicans off the list for you?
Well, my concern, coming into carrying the bill was really rural Republicans. That's what we experienced last year, because you have a lot of systems in the state, a lot of counties in the state, rural areas where there's no other option except that local option, and many of those schools are very, very good. And the school superintendents and the teachers and whatnot, have the ear of their representatives. And I'll say this: the superintendents, their association and the school board association were neutral at our public hearing. Today, in fact, when I leave you guys, I'm headed to a superintendent's reception tonight. If you don't see me, come look for if I disappear. But they had a meeting this morning, and a lot of them were still upset. But once they were able to get an explanation from their association about kind of, look, here's what the bill says and does, I think they felt better. But I think really, and I had several representatives today tell me, look, I didn't vote for the bill. My superintendent was just wearing me out and just had a lot of concerns, and said I really don't think they understood the bill. Right. And I think that's really what happened. I think that we appreciate the associations supporting us in that neutral position, but I think they could have done a better job communicating with some of the local superintendents. Some superintendents probably would never have been for it, but I think that some of the really vehement concern they realize is something they really shouldn't have been so concerned about. So, but it really it was in the rural areas, and has been all along. Every year when this has been discussed, that's where most of the oppositions come from.
And Danny, I feel the need to point this out because so many people have made this an issue of anti-public school sentiment for school choice. That's really not the case. You can support both. I've pointed out in an interview I did with you earlier, you and I were on the founding Trussville City School Foundation Board to raise money for the academic side of schools. You were a former board member in Trussville. You've worked that side of things. Does that help you at all when you go talk to these superintendents and these AEA groups, having that experience?
It does, but I also think that I step back and ask them to look at the world that we live in today versus the world you grew up in,
right,
or the world we had 10 years ago. And everything we do has changed. The way we work, the way we shop, the way we watch television, where we work, remote, all the different things we do. Technology is part of that. Part of it's just that the lifestyles people live today. And today's world is all about flexibility, customization, and choice. And yet, I said, do you really think we cannot live in a world like that and function in a world like that and yet have an education box that hasn't changed in 100 years?
Right.
And wow. that registers. They understand that, okay. I said, so what happens is, the child that's coming along who's in that world is not going to go sit in a row of desks with a teacher at the front. It's just a totally different, the tools are different. Yeah. So I think people kind of see that, and they kind of bring it on home to some of the way things they do that are just different, and the the choices and flexibility that they want in their own lives. And I think number one, it's responsive to that change. The other thing is I think it's going to push the public schools to innovate. When there are other options out there, it's going to naturally force you to think out of the box.
They'll get better.
And I mean, that's what we do. So I think that people just use your common sense. Do you really think we can educate children today like we did 20 years ago? It just doesn't, And so Scott, you and I talked about some of the examples in the city of Birmingham school system, even Jefferson County school system, where they're already adapting to that. Birmingham City Schools has kind of gone to a, quote, year-round school model with intersessions throughout the years, and they're seeing improvements in their reading scores and math scores through the year post-COVID. And in Jefferson County, we're seeing, one of our feeder schools there in our district, feeder pattern at Clay Chalva High School, has got 3 elementary schools, each themed differently, but kids within that feeder pattern can go to the school that best meets their needs. And so that's all good, I think. And I think people are finally beginning to understand that.
Yeah, public schools as an assembly line are just not the best thing anymore.
Right. Right.
Danny, we've got less than maybe a minute and a half here, but I do want to touch base and just get an update from you on the gambling legislation. You were a no vote. I'm against it. Phil's against it.
Yeah, and Danny, by the way, you may already know this, but I'm looking. Todd Stacy just tweeted out that in the last 30 minutes, the Senate went in and then recessed to allow the Tourism Committee for the gambling bill to have a chance to meet. So they may be meeting on it any time now.
Okay.
Or what are you hearing, Danny? We're hearing wholesale changes. What are you picking up?
Well, I think I told you when the bill the House sent up to the Senate, I thought would have a tougher road up there, and I think that's probably what's happened. I don't know what they're going to come back with. I just really haven't been tuned into that, been focused elsewhere. But I did see they were supposed to meet earlier today, and then didn't meet, but said that they might reconvene in a matter of hours. They were working on legislations, but I really haven't heard.
I'm going to go ahead and make a prediction, Danny, that it's going to be the Porch Creeks are going to run the lottery, and they're going to give tribal lands and a special tribal title to Kay Ivey. Nobody's laughing.
I wanted to give Danny a chance to laugh first.
Yeah.
Chief High Stepper is going to be taking over sometime soon. No,
I don't know. And to be honest, I don't know. Again, I wasn't, as you know, didn't vote against the gaming legislation. So early on, I had raised my concerns and whatnot. So I really wasn't involved in all the details and drafting the legislation. And I honestly don't know what the reaction to what particular changes, how that would be received in the House. I think they probably expect some changes, but I just don't know what the temperature is on that.
Right now, the Tourism Committee is playing hide and seek, and I'm seeing a lot of things I've never seen in Montgomery before.
They're meeting in a 6th-floor broom closet right now, trying to stay out of the way.
Hey, Danny, we promised to only drag you in for a few minutes, and you stayed longer than that. I appreciate it. I say it every time. Every time I get stuck with a job like this, I drag certain people in, and you're one of them.
Hey, and Danny, by the way, if you've got any old stories on Scott, we might need them.
Oh, Lord.
I'm sure I can help you out in that.
He knows more than he needs to know. Representative Danny Garrett from Trussville. Danny, we appreciate you so much. Thank you for taking the time.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Man.
Okay, bye-bye.
We're going to grab a quick break right here, and I, Scott Buttram, will return with the master, Phil Williams. He's sitting in the studio with us. We'll come back to close today out. You hang around. Welcome back to Rightside Radio. I'm Scott Buttram from the Trussville Tribune, sitting in for Phil Williams, who is sitting across the desk. It started out me filling in for you, but it ended up we got a partnership going right now.
I'm pretty sure we need to make this a regular thing, man. You just come on in whenever you feel like it. Just jump on and hang on.
Well, I will say this has been the fastest 53 minutes of the day. It's just blown by already. Hey, one thing, and we've covered a lot of ground in the hour since you sat down behind the mic there, Phil, but one thing that I mentioned to my earlier guest, but I haven't said this to you, today felt terribly anticlimactic to me for a Super Tuesday. And just so you know, I treat election days, I mean, it's like a ball game. We do tailgate food, the whole 9 yards. It's a party. I love election nights. I'm not into this today. Everything's just a foregone conclusion except one congressional race.
Yeah, it's true. And, there's local races. Like, for instance, here we are, my law firm, one of the guys in my law firm is running for a local judge.
I saw the signs in the pickup trucks when I pulled in.
Yeah, he's running for a local judgeship. So he's been working hard for a year. And so for him, it's going to be a big deal night. But then, most of it looks like a foregone conclusion on the ballot. I mean, I imagine that, the PSC race, Twinkle Kavanaugh will probably pull it out. I imagine that Mike Rogers in this district will probably pull it out. I imagine that Trump's going to pull it out. And then you're right, like AL2, which is Congressional District 2,
right,
is a little crazy right now. Like, all God's children got to run for Congress in that particular one right now.
Yeah.
And there will be a runoff, I would imagine.
There's so many candidates in there. I thought it was for the Birmingham mayor's race. I mean, that's always double-digit candidates.
You could field two basketball teams.
Yeah.
I don't know what we got in there.
You could.
And then you're right. Down in CD1 with Barry Moore and Jerry Carl. All right. Let's go ahead and run the risk of predictions here. What do you think? Who's going to come out?
This is a conversation we had earlier. I really felt like Barry Moore's message was resonating with voters down there. And this is just standing back looking at social media responses. So I felt like Barry's message was really resonating. Then I saw polling this weekend from AUM that shows Jerry Carl up in all the polls. So I literally do not know what to expect. Everybody I've talked to that's more knowledgeable than me are calling it a toss-up.
I'm going to go ahead and just get risky here and say it's going to be Barry Moore. I mean, there's not a third candidate, so there won't be a runoff.
Right.
In the Republican side. So I really, if you look at the geography, Barry served most of that district, and Baldwin County, which is huge for that district now. Jerry Carl lost Baldwin County when he ran last time.
Right.
And he lost half of his Mobile district. So I think the uphill climb has been for Jerry Carl. To prove that to the the constituents, and it's truly a dichotomy. I mean, you got Barry Moore is a Freedom Caucus guy.
Yep.
He's been supported by Club for Growth in the past. I think technically they're in it here right now too, but they all realized that Jerry Carl was going to wind up making Club for Growth the Boogeybear, and they decided not to let that happen. Anyway, the bottom line is I think Barry's going to eke it out. I'm going to say 51 to 52%.
That really does fall more in line with the way I felt up till I saw the polling over the weekend. I can't put a finger on any one specific thing, but it just felt like voters down there were responding a little better to Barry and his message than they were Jerry Carl. Look, I'm going to say this. I think they're both great guys.
Yeah.
And I think they've both been very good congressmen and represented Alabama the way we would expect them. I kind of hate the bad blood that built not between the two candidates necessarily, but between some of their supporters. I just think that's so unnecessary.
I would agree with that, and we'll see how it pans out. But we'll this one we'll know tonight. I think this race is won in the primary.
All right, I got another question for you, Master Phil.
How much time we got there, Big Rig?
You got about 20 seconds.
20 seconds. This is a quick one. Nikki Haley in or out tomorrow?
She's got to be out. I mean, after tomorrow, Trump's not going to have enough delegates yet. But the pathway is to her is so tenuous that it's why are you doing this?
It's going to look like a pebble against a landslide when we look at the electoral votes tomorrow morning.
I think I need to say too before we go how much I appreciate you, and I say that with all honesty, man. You have no idea what it means to be able to call you and say, "Hey, brother, I got to be in court for a client. They really need me. Can you come in?" And you said, "Sure, I'll do both days if you want to." But you're good at what you do, and the Trustful Tribune, y'all need to check them out because that's good news right there.
Thank you, Phil. That's big praise coming from you, and I love doing it. Love spending some time with the Rightside Ruffians. For now, this is Scott Buttram signing out on behalf of Phil Williams. He'll be back with you tomorrow. Thank you for being with us today.